around the globe, and certainly in the U.S. I am going to share some U.S. case studies today and a few things that we've been learning as we've been going, and how some of those case studies may be applied globally as well. As we look at some of the supply chain challenges, it can be very complex, and so trying to bring it down to something that is relevant, we can look at supply chain challenges in terms of the production of materials. We can look at supply chain challenges in terms of logistics. We can look at supply chain challenges in terms of the labor workforce it takes to produce. We could look at them in many different ways or facets, and we can see that there are challenges in almost every one of those facets. Bottom line is that the problem isn't going away anytime soon. It's here for us for a while, and it is our problem to solve. And there are new ways that we can look at solving it. We don't have to continue to do things the way we've been doing them for many years. So, talking a little bit more about what happened during COVID, it simply exposed some challenges that already existed. Now, I've been working in this, on solutions in this field for close to 10 years now. And as we've been working on them, there are some things that really come to the surface. So first off, if I'm a procurement person inside of a manufacturing organization and I need to find a new supplier, where do I go? What is my source? I can turn to Google, I can turn to some industry organizations, I can turn to a few databases that exist in certain regions and certain areas, but there is no central database of manufacturing capabilities that exists in the world today, and there has not been one in the US until the one I will tell you about today. So it exposes some issues and challenges as we try to change the way in which we source, the way in which we think about procurement, the way in which we think about finding a manufacturer. Also, most of the databases that we turn to are either very siloed, or the data is out of date, we can't trust it. So we try to turn to those databases to find new sources, and when we get there, we realize the company is out of business, they're no longer in that field of work. There are a whole host of challenges and issues that exist around the existing databases. The other challenge that often comes to the forefront is when we talk to manufacturers, they tell us this. Number one, I don't want a government database. I won't support it. I don't want an academic database. It's not going to provide the needs that industry needs. We need an industry database that solves the problems and challenges for industry. And it's really eye-opening when you think about that, because if I'm a manufacturer, typically I'm not going to want to put my data into a database that the governing body holds, because they hold also my regulation, they hold mandates, they hold taxes, and all kinds of other information that they want from that data that I may or may not want to provide. And so as a manufacturer, we need an industry-driven solution that allows a manufacturer to freely put their information in without fear of losing it on those fronts. So, how do we solve the challenge? We get innovative, right? And there are a lot of ways to innovate, some of them great, some of them not so great. I love the picture, by the way, it tells a lot of things, but there are a lot of solutions. And one of the things that continues to come to the forefront is our solution has to have deep data. And what we mean by that is this: there has to be enough information that I can search and find a manufacturer based upon their capability, based on what they can do, not what they produce. There are plenty of places where I can go and search for products, and I can find a manufacturer based on what they're currently making, but there are few, if any, solutions where I can go to find what a manufacturer does. Huge distinction there, and one which really makes all the difference. So I'll touch today on just a couple of things. Talking about a few of the platforms, I'll share a couple of quick case studies with you about how they're being implemented and some of their results. What I'll be talking about is a solution that's called the CONNEX Marketplace, and it's about connecting manufacturers together and allowing people to be able to source local first. So as we think about solving the supply chain issue, we have to be able to find those resources that are closest to our facilities first, and then expand from there when those raw materials or other or goods or manufacturers are not necessarily close to our facility to be able to expand geographically from there. So where did this start? It started with a lot of conversations with manufacturers about 10 years ago. And we started listening. They started to tell us exactly what was required. They said we need to be able to have a solution where we can put information about our equipment, our processes, our materials, our certifications, and all kinds of other capabilities that could be searched, and where I can find that data on any type of search capability I put in. So as we started to build what they were asking for, we realized that there were a few things that were missing from existing databases. First and foremost, they asked for the ability to be able to visualize a supply chain, be able to see a supply chain graphically represented, and have a system that would tell them where the issues existed in that supply chain. So to have risk assessment associated with visualization of the supply chain, to be able to drill down and see. And as we started talking to primes, OEMs, and large manufacturers, they told us exclusively that, look, we have to have something that will give us reporting down the tiers of the supply chain. We can't just be able to get information about our first tier or second tier suppliers. We have to have supply chain visualization and visibility and risk assessment that go deep into the tiers, that allow us to be able to drive out some of that risk. And we have to be able to see the different kinds of risk that are important to our organization. There were two other things that really stood out. Another one was that if you solve the supply chain issue for me, then the next issue in line is going to be a workforce problem. Because if I start getting more work, I need more employees. And if we can't solve the two hand in hand, we haven't solved the problem. So we have to be able to have a workforce solution that accompanies our supply chain solution so that we have tools that will help us solve both simultaneously. And by the way, R&D needs to go in the same bucket because the innovation issue is right there with them. So one other thing before I leave this slide, they talked a lot about the fact that there has to be broad support for a solution. If we build simply a technical solution and we ask people to be involved in a technical solution, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem. We can have the best database of manufacturing data in the world, and if it has no support, the data is not kept up to date, or it's not supported, it still becomes of no value very quickly. So the solution has to be a solution where we have broad industry support. That means large manufacturers, small and medium-sized manufacturers. That means industry associations, governments, and others who all lean into a single solution. The biggest reason the solution doesn't exist today is because we've never had one solution that everyone was willing to lean into. Now think about that for a moment. If we can't get in and solve by having a single solution where we can put enough data to find an alternate supplier, an alternate manufacturer on the day that we need it, then we don't have a solution that actually solves the problem. When you start running into resiliency issues, you start running into, well, resiliency is one of the biggest words used right now in manufacturing supply chain. But if you run into a natural disaster, or any other issue that exists in disruption of the supply chain, whether that be change in consumer demand or any other type of disruption, you have to be able to have a resilient supply chain or the ability to diversify your supply chain. So to give you a little bit of a glimpse into what the manufacturers ask for, the first thing they ask for is we need to be able to search. We need to be able to not only search and find on a keyword, but that needs to be able to be any type of keyword in manufacturing, and the results need to come back like Google. It's got to be less than a second. It has to be relevant to what I'm looking for, and I need to be able to filter it. So the filters need to be built dynamically so that they are absolutely matching to the search that I've run. So I can search on, I can filter on things like geography, on NAICS codes, SIC codes. I can filter down by anything which allows me to narrow my search And then I also need the ability to be able to expand my search. So not only do I need to be able to narrow, but if I can't find what I'm looking for in my local area, then I need to be able to expand nationally, regionally, and eventually internationally as well. The other thing they asked for, and I talked about the supply chain visualization and the risk assessment. In the risk assessment, they said, look, we need to be able to align with what's happening in industry. So we've been working with the Air Force, the U.S. Air Force, for about the last 6 or 7 years, and they identified 9 areas of risk. Their top 9 areas of risk, we have begun loading into the application so that those areas of risk can be addressed, and that a manufacturer can actually get in and be able to see graphical representation of where that risk exists. So it'll be flagged up for them, and for example, if they happen to find somebody in their supply chain that is a single supplier, they have single supplier risk, relationship risk, any of those other types of risks that exist, they need to be able to see it come up on their visualization and have mitigating action that could be taken. One last item that I'll share with you. They also indicated that they would like to be able to connect to other manufacturers, and B2B connections, and B2G connections. They also wanted to be able to have connections to funding sources and others. So they wanted increasing layers of value, and this is what really gets a manufacturer to remain active and involved in a database. One of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest reasons that these solutions have failed in the past has been because there has been diminishing participation by manufacturers over time. And that tends to be because there's little value in the application for the manufacturer. If it's built from a government perspective, it's built to meet the government's needs. But if it's built from a manufacturer's perspective, it's built to meet those manufacturers' needs. And if that value is there, they will stay in there, and they will continue to keep their data fresh and up to date. And that means deep data, data that we're able to search to be able to find those capabilities. Let me just give you one quick example here. I'll share this with Northrop Grumman's permission. So they came to us with a particularly challenging issue, and they said, look, we need to find 16 qualified suppliers over the next 8 weeks that have these very specific capabilities. They have to have all these certifications and loads of other criteria that they provided to us. They said, this is an extremely difficult challenge for us, and our buyers have not been able to find who we're looking for. So we took the challenge. We lined up 16 qualified suppliers over 8 weeks, and the buyers were stunned. They couldn't believe it. The reason it works is because we were able to leverage not just the database of somewhere between 140 to 150,000 US manufacturers that we've assembled, but also because of a vast partner network we put together that we could reach out to and ask that they also reach their network in order to bring them in. So between the database and the partner network, we feel like we have reached to somewhere between 70 to 85% of US manufacturing capabilities today. I talked about the expansion of search. So if you're searching in a regional or state level solution, you also have the ability to expand that nationally. We're now just beginning the international expansion. So if you're doing a search in your local region, you can't find what you're looking for, you expand out across your country, you can't find what you're looking for in your country, next expansion goes to international. There's broad industry support for this type of solution, and that goes for large manufacturers, goes for government entities, small and medium-sized manufacturers. I'm sure some of those names may be familiar to most of you. Those partnerships, I can't emphasize enough. Without partnerships and without broad industry support, you can't get a solution that will actually be able to be used by a broad section of the manufacturing community. And here's why. So let's say that we're able to get a number of manufacturers into a platform to participate. Well, the minute disruption occurs, we have a pandemic or we have a natural disaster of some kind, we need to find alternate supply. Well, if we have a siloed database, Where do we go? How do we expand? Who do we turn to at the time that we can't find what we're looking for? The only way to be able to expand that is to make sure that we have that broad industry support that helps us find additional manufacturers who are not currently in a database and help bring them in. They're also very key to ensuring that the manufacturers remain engaged and involved. So it takes all of us working together in order to have a solution that actually solves the need that we have. First and foremost, the one I'm talking about is the problem in the US, but also globally. So to give you a little bit of an understanding of the solutions that have been implemented in the United States, there are state-level solutions, there's a sector-level solution, and a national-level solution. The sector level is in the advanced air mobility space, and it contains manufacturers that serve advanced air mobility. So it is a very thin slice of a broad manufacturing base. Then we have state-level solutions that are serving the needs of an individual state, and in that state then they're able to search and find all kinds of manufacturers within their geography, within their state. And then last and most importantly is the national marketplace. The national marketplace then is the expansion. So if I'm looking and I can't find what I need in my sector, or I can't find what I need in my state, I'm able to then expand into the national marketplace to be able to find the capabilities across the country. Just a quick example, the state of Oklahoma, and they actually came to us and stood up a state implementation in, well actually they came to us in February this year. And they said, look, we'd really like to have this up, but we need it up in a month. We need a statewide solution. Our governor would like that implemented in our state in 1 month from now. And can you do that, first off? And then secondly, if you do, we have the governor's support, we have the legislature's support, and we have the support of a broad community that supports manufacturing in our state. We helped them stand up their solution in a month, and in less than 3 months they had well over 600 manufacturers who had registered and optimized their profile data. That means deep data. And those manufacturers have since been able to garner contracts with some major primes who are looking for capabilities that existed in that state that were not previously able to be found. So that's just one example of how it's working, and this happens to be at the state level. Let me use one other one that is pandemic related. So in March of 2020, as the pandemic was really hitting and shutting down the United States, we were just in the process of implementing a solution in Florida. Now, Florida had come to us because there were challenges with all kinds of natural disasters. The hurricanes had hit not just Florida, but Puerto Rico as well. And Florida is a major producer and provider to Puerto Rico. And as a result of that, they knew they needed another solution that would help them more quickly find manufacturing capabilities when a natural disaster hit. And they needed to be able to better mitigate the problems associated with that supply chain disruption. So we were in process of doing that. Just as we rolled it out, the pandemic hit. And so instead of a natural disaster, they now had a pandemic that they were trying to deal with. And very quickly they pivoted and started putting in PPE information. And the manufacturers responded brilliantly and quickly. And it was only a matter of about a month. They had a long list of providers in the state of Florida who could make almost any kind of PPE that was needed or requested, including all kinds of masks, ventilators, and other PPE that was being sought after. Northrop Grumman, I'll share one other case study. It looks like on this display, my slide is a little bit messed up here. However, this was one 2-week request that we had from them. And in this 2-week request, they posted 2 requests specifically and individually, 2 different buying groups. And very quickly we were able to set up 26 suppliers that responded. We had 35 partners around the country that also participated in helping us find those qualified suppliers. 8 suppliers were interviewed, and 6 RFQs were issued with over $250,000 of initial POs. So just a tremendous way, and Northrop has been a tremendous supporter of the platform. In fact, we recently just trained the remaining buying organizations for Northrop in North America. So let me just close with a couple of wrap-up statements that will reiterate a few things that we've covered. So there is a solution that's been put together. We have been able to solve some of the many difficult challenges which have existed around not having a type of central supply chain database that we can all turn to. It does take all of us working together and leaning in together. And there are ways to be able to find those qualified suppliers, no matter how difficult they might be to find. There are ways of being able to get to those capabilities and be able to find them based upon what they do, not just what they produce. And collaboration is the key. So with that, I would like to find out, are there any questions that I can answer for you? If not, you're welcome to stop by the booth or hit the website, connexmarketplace.com. Thank you very much.